Welcome to We Who Are Dark,
a conversation in history and humanities. I'm Dr. Neil Vaz.
And I'm Trent Tomengo. Okay, so we are back, and we're supposed to be discussing or having a conversation about the idea of race and how we get this thing we call black. Now, as I said the last time, the name that this group of people have, that we now call black or African American, the name of this group has changed throughout the history, at least of this country. Like, that's my African American, like that's my area of understanding, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You can go all the way back. You got, first they just called us straight N-words, right? Right. Then it was...
Well, they still call you straight N-words. That's going to be a constant, right?
Then they called you, Negro.
Negro was in the 20s.
Then it was a colored.
Yep, that's your 50s and your 60s.
Then it was black.
But not everybody,
subscribed
to the word black.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you had like some pro-black individuals like Malcolm X and others at
Afro-American. Right.
Among the 22 million non-Muslim Afro-Americans.
Right. They're doing Afro-American. Then in the 80s, I think, is when we got the title African-American.
African-American.
Right. So different names for the same group.
Same group.
Right. However, why do we need to separate this group out? And I'm going to go back to Frantz Fanon's quote in that Richard Powell mentioned in his book. And he talked about, Frantz Fanon in that book, in the introduction, talked about my blackness does not hold itself out as a lack. Universality have no place within me. He says something like, it drives me out of myself. Yeah. And so all of that, when you think about it, when we think about these people that we call African American or black people, it's unlike any other group in the world, in the diaspora, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do we even get to the point where you got a different people? Here's why I think you said the last time that I don't call myself African American. Mm-hmm. And I don't. Yeah. I say I am Black American. Now, some people say, why not just call yourself American? Because there is a difference between the people who are of my culture. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between us and every other people that we call American, particularly white people, right?
You're saying that the national identity of America is quite... There's a difference between this subsection of America versus everybody else.
Exactly.
And it has to do with the trajectory of the historical narrative that goes all the way through.
Exactly. Okay. And so you can't say, this is why I don't do All Lives Matter. I don't do that.
Yeah.
All lives do matter. We know that.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not white people that's getting indiscriminately killed by cops.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to say Black Lives Matter because apparently you don't understand that these lives do matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They matter to some people. May not matter to you, but they matter to some people.
Yeah.
So when you talk about things that are specifically the culture, the experiences of dark-skinned people in this country, and even more specific, who we call African Americans, there is a marked difference. There's a difference in the culture. Yeah. There's a difference in the speech. There's a difference in the way we address religion. There's a difference in the art. There's a difference in the music, the literature. All these things are different. And so what Frantz Fanon was talking about is in the introduction, the way Powell used it, is that because of all of these differences, there's enough of us to constitute a separate culture. And so the things that we're going to talk about in this podcast, the art, the literature, the music, the history, the religion of Black people in this country, and from you, worldwide, this is something that is distinct. Distinct that can be studied and need to be studied and need to be understood. Now, black writers do this all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're trying to convince black writers this is an area of scholarship you should be diving into.
Yeah.
They're already doing that. That's how we get the books and stuff that we already know about, right?
So what about all the people that say that why don't black people in general, why don't we just study American history? Why don't we just integrate black history as a part of American history, or African American humanities as a part of American humanities? Why does it have to be separate?
I wish we could do that.
Yeah.
I wish we could do that. But when you say American history, by default, that's white history. Because up until fairly recently, I'm thinking like the 70s, you did not have the inclusion of the black perspective in history in this country.
Yeah.
And now it looks like we're going backwards. Like even the strides that were made the 70s, 80s, 90s, with including all of these, the scholarship about blackness in Florida now, that is like against the law.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you didn't even have it. You didn't even have it then. I forgot your question.
Why do we have these different courses, like separate or segregate history?
We have these different courses and these different sections of information because we have been excluded from what we call the mainstream.
Yeah.
Right? And unfortunately, mainstream does not always mean true.
Yeah.
Mainstream just means what white people want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. That's what mainstream means.
And this goes back to the last episode where I said, I honestly, I didn't even like history growing up. That was my worst subject. And didn't like anything that had to do with any of those types of classes. My favorite class, honestly, in growing up was math. Because when it came to like English and literature and history and social studies, I didn't like it. And one of the reasons why I didn't like those classes is because I could never see myself in the story. If anything, my ancestors were just a beast of burden or a tool for somebody else, like a stepping stone, right? And it was all done in a very insidious and subtle way. So we're like, for instance, if we're learning that Thomas Jefferson is a hero, and then there's a side note in the book that says, oh, he had slaves, and he had this, and he had that. And it's like, wait a second, like, who were his slaves? What color were they?
Right.
Why is Thomas Jefferson a hero while simultaneously enslaving people that look like me?
And why is the person who wrote the Declaration of Independence also wrote one of the most racist documents, the Notes on the State of Virginia?
Yeah.
1782.
1782.
Yeah. How could this exist? Right? How can this exist? Now, but before we get into Jefferson, and that's going to be like several podcasts.
That fool there, boy.
Look, we're not even going to talk about when we went to D.C. with those students.
Yeah.
And look, every monument that they had, had no signage. You could walk up to it and you could just, be yourself in these. When you get to the Jefferson Monument, there was a sign saying no protest. I'm like, why? Why this one?
Yeah.
And even the students were asking, why this one? I'm like, well, in case you wanted to know. And that's when you and I, we just kind of, we kind of like let off, and the students was like, after we got through, well, I was
playing devil's advocate.
Right. Well, actually, if I remember correctly, you started off giving like the history, and then you threw it to me.
Yeah.
And you said, well, Professor Tomengo, what do you think? and I said, man, F Jefferson, right? And then the students were like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And then we went into reading the quotes that they had and all of these things about life, liberty, and the rights of man and stuff. And I'm like, at the same time he was talking about all of these rights of human beings, he was one of the most brutal slave owners. So where does all of that talk come in at, right?
Yeah.
But we're supposed to be talking about race, right?
So back to race.
Back to race.
So wait, why are these titles of black people always changing all the time. And what was it even created for in the first place?
All right, so let me answer the first question. The reason why the name has changed, and I've made this statement many times, the name of this group that we now call African American or black, the reason why the name has changed so much is because of the political circumstances have changed. Now, I understand we're still going through a lot of things as black people, so we're not going to try to, have a pissing contest and debate who has endured the worst. We know as black people, we still have to face things that other people don't have to face. Yeah. Right? That's a given. But a slave has no rights. Yeah. Right? A Negro in the 1920s, a Negro in the 1920s is different from a slave. They're free. Yeah. Right? Still subject to Jim Crow laws and all of that, but they're still free. In the 1960s, a 1960s colored person, because then the name changed to color. Yeah. A 1960s colored person is a different political animal
than the Negro.
Yeah. Even though some of the same fights are still going on, right? The same fight for equality, the same fight for the right to just be, the right to an education. Those things are still the same, but the political circumstances has changed. And then, of course, in the 80s, the political circumstances changed again. So the name has changed according to the political circumstances. But I'll say this, that the name that has been called to this group has not been a name that has been chosen by the people in the group.
I would even
except African American, because I think that's what a lot of people.
Jesse Jackson, but I'll go as far as to say this. I think that sometimes black people in this country, or whatever you want to call them, have wrestled and struggled with the fact that race and their categorization was solely created to exploit and benefit off of their backs. Right.
But that's just not black people. That's just not black people. That's even people in the Caribbean and even people from India when India was colonized.
Exactly. But the thing is, in America, is that America's a settler colony. It was a settler colony. So you had a bunch of white people there, and then you had enslaved black people. The point I'm trying to make is I think that black people have never really dealt with necessarily, I guess, the issue of labeling. And so this is why every generation, the labels always change, even though the circumstances don't always necessarily change. And instead of people...
But the circumstances have changed.
But I'm saying that circumstances in terms of relative to the dominant society, right? You're still being treated as an N, right?
Okay, I got you.
People are always saying, well, I don't want to be Negro. I want to be colored. And then they say a few years later, they realize the colored is being treated just as negatively almost as the Negro was. So they say, I want to be treated as a black man. I'm a black man now. And then a few generations later, I'm going to be African American. So they're changing the names of themselves, but without truly changing the circumstance.
But Doniel, clearly, the fact that you and I both got, I would just say white educations, right? We were both educated in, white institutions, right? Howard, you got your doctorate from Howard. That was not the case in the 20s. Charles Drew, perfect example. Yeah. Had to go, where was it, Austria? He had to go to Austria to get his license as a physician because he couldn't get it here in America. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I think he died because he couldn't get a blood transfusion, and he's the one that pioneered that process. So clearly, we're in a different kind of situation now. So the circumstances have changed. What you're saying is not totally true. So explain what you mean by that.
I'll argue this. You have, and generally speaking, you have one or two black people getting education. Malcolm X would talk about this.
Thurgood Marshall himself has admitted that it is 7 years since the Supreme Court desegregation decision, And here in America, you still have only 6% desegregation. You can't tell me because 2 black students are going to the University of Georgia that that's integration. Well, you got 1 million black people in Georgia. You can't tell me that 4 little black children in the white school system of New Orleans, Louisiana is integration. You can't tell me that a handful of black children going to school with white people in Little Rock, Arkansas is integration. That's token integration. And what is a token? If you go outside and get on the streetcar, you put a token in the box. That token takes the place of money. Token is a substitute. Token is artificial. Token is not the real thing. And when the white man gives you token integration, it's like a pacifier that you give to your little baby when it starts crying.
That doesn't mean the whole group is necessarily being uplifted. You have even people that have PhDs. You can still be psychologically brainwashed to believe that you are less than someone else. So you're more hung up on, as a PhD or as a professor or as a scholar, as an educated individual, you're more hung up on the labels that you're being called because you still have something deeply psychologically ingrained in you from birth about everything negative that's associated with being fill in the blank. And I'm not even going to say the word because it doesn't matter what the word is because we're always running from that thing, right?
Right.
These days, I see black people now, they're calling themselves Moors, they're calling themselves the original indigenous, they're calling themselves
African Hebrews.
Hebrews, they're calling themselves the Asiatic black man. These are all things to make themselves feel better about themselves, but they're just names. Like,
I got you. The political circumstances.
You?
Okay, and so we go back to the idea about race. What was done to Africans in America was done to Africans in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Africans in, you name any other country where the slave trade happened.
Yep.
There is a commonality of political circumstances that is across. It's what Du Bois was talking about when he said that the problem of the 20th century will be the problem of the color line.
Yeah.
And I don't care how you could call it a caste system, as in India. You can call it racism. You can call it classism. I don't care what you call it. There is a commonality all around the world that is a result of the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
That the darker you are, the worse your life is. The worse your existence is. The more stuff you got to fight against for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Right. And the lighter you are, the higher on the totem pole you are. So, and all of those ideas are tied to this concept that we call race. And really, there is no biological construct. Race is not a biological construct. There is no biological basis for the idea of race.
Yeah.
It is not. And the fact that we're calling ourselves African American, or I'm going to be talking about, black art, black literature, black music. You're going to be talking about black history, or people who don't like the term black, African American art.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about those things on this podcast, but in order to really understand the depth of what we're going to be talking about, you got to understand the complexity of the people we call black.
Yeah.
And you got to understand that the fact that we are called black is not a biological thing.
Yeah.
I know we got darker skin tone.
Yeah.
But
even within Africa, for instance, there's different shades of darkness, right?
Right.
And then if you were to walk from, I always tell people this, if you were to walk from Senegal, Africa, West Africa, across the Sahel, all the way into Central Africa, all the way into East Africa, all the way into Northeast Africa, all the way into the Middle East, and then walk across through Asia, you're not gonna see, there's no like clear dividing line between skin colors.
And
skin colors like on a spectrum.
Right. So it's
on a continuum.
Yeah, but is it because of the contact with Europeans? Is that why, or is it just natural?
It's just natural.
It's just not.
And that's the thing, because once you say contact with Europeans, now you're still making that same racial argument. You're just instead of calling them white, you're calling them Europeans. But what is a European?
Right. I get you.
Because even Europe, Southern Europeans look a lot more like North Africans than they do like Northern Europeans.
I agree with you. Okay. All right. I get it. I get that.
So people in general are on just a spectrum, on a continuum of color, on a continuum of biological characteristics. But because of the Christopher Columbus and all these explorers that went from one place to another and took people from very distant regions of the planet and brought them to the other distant regions of the planet, it seems like that there are distinct people.
Okay, I got you.
But human beings really exist on a continuum.
Okay, so let me go back to the statement I made about that would be an argument for people to say, well, all people are the same. All lives matter.
Yeah.
I still beg to differ, because if all lives matter, we wouldn't have the political circumstances that we have.
500 years of slavery has created distinct races.
Exactly. Or what we call races. And so the idea that race is a political construct, a socio-political construct that has an economic component to it, right? Then why then do we have to separate ourselves out like that? I guess that was a question you were originally asking.
And I was asking just as a rhetorical question, but it's because, for obvious reasons, if history has separated a people, then you got to study history. And history is all right. What it is. Like if in Germany they made concentration camps for Jewish people, yes, those Jewish people might have been German themselves, but studying German history is not going to cover the plight or the experience of people that were in the Holocaust necessarily, right? So you might have to hash out and distinguish. Okay, let's study Jewish history in Germany, or let's study Holocaust history. All right, it's a very particular situation that happened to a particular people, and so you sometimes have to separate those things in order to get a very, I guess, complete picture of what happened in that said society.
Well, so now you're reminding me of the phrase that says it's the victor that writes the history, or something like that.
Yes, 100%.
Something like that. Like if the rabbit had to write a book about the hunt, it would be a different book than the hunters, right? Yep. And I think that's where the expression came from. It ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. Right. So understanding the complexity of what it means to be black. First of all, understanding that there is a essential culture to investigate, to understand. Which and I think the last podcast I talked about using Richard Powell's book as a basis for this podcast, and I'm still with that. The introduction to that book establishes the idea that this is something that is worthy to be studied, and you can't treat black culture like, oh, it's like everybody's culture. Yeah. It's like we're all the same. No, we're not. Yeah. If we're all the same, then why are you and I doing this podcast? Because we want to get the history out about people who look like us. Yeah. If we're all treated the same, why is it then that we are even have to separate these things out, like African American history, African American art, or black history, or black? Why do we have to separate? If we're all the same, why do we have to separate it out? Right?
Good question. And that's something that this podcast is going to be about, and we're going to delve into all that.
So I want to go back to what we mean by black people, and I'm going on a quote from Richard Powell's book, Black Art, A Cultural History, and I love the definition, and I may be, getting some of the words wrong, but the way he defines black people, which is the way I define black people, which is why I don't use the term for me as African American. I prefer black. Yeah. Black people are the men, women, and children who, because of the transatlantic slave trade, European colonialism, Western imperialism, they are globally dispersed, they are culturally hybrid, and narratively engaged in multilingual polemics with each other and the world at large. That's how he defines black people. Now, that doesn't only encompass black people in America.
Yeah,
that is the diaspora.
Diaspora, yeah.
So when I say I'm black, I belong to a black culture that is worldwide.
I see.
Kind of like Jeff Donaldson's painting called Majorities.
Yeah.
Right? And I explain to my students, it's this very African-esque kind of painting, and it's called Majorities. And they're like, why is it called Majorities? I'm like, well, when you think about worldwide population, people of color are a majority.
Yeah.
And because the fact that you call yourself a minority,
yeah, you're thinking small-minded. You're thinking within
you're
the
thinking
boundaries.
within only American culture, right? And it's like American culture is really skewed.
Yeah.
You can't understand yourself on the basis of this American culture. You have to understand yourself on a global scale.
Yeah.
And that's what the diaspora is about. And that's why I say black. Anytime in this podcast, I'm going to use the term black.
Yeah. Me personally, I graduated from even labeling myself at least when it comes to like filling out state documents. You understand what I'm saying? So whenever they ask me on like a job application, or whether they ask me on any type of like official forms what I am, I don't put anything. I put other. And the reason why is because I know why all of this was created in the first place. And sometimes I mess with them. I'll put that on Japanese sometimes.
You might be, if you did 23andMe, you might find out you got some Asiatic genes in you,
I switch it up every time. Like I'll put like I'm white, I'll put that I'm Indian, I'll put that I'm Japanese, I'll put other, sometimes just leave it blank. And the reason why I do that is because why not? Like this is all created anyway, right? But it's not to say that I deny my Africanity or my blackness or my African ancestors. Like obviously, like by looking at me, that my ancestors come from Africa, and everything that I promote and everything that I teach is African. But I don't feel the need to play their game and box myself into something.
But I want to push back on that idea.
Yeah,
I understand what you're doing, but sometimes that data is how we understand what's happening to black people.
But sometimes that data, I'm gonna give you a story. Sometimes that data is used against us.
Sometimes it is.
Let me give you an example.
Go ahead.
When I signed my two kids up for school in Seminole County Public Schools, I filled out all the paperwork, and the lady said to me, "Why didn't you fill out the last part? You have to fill out the last part." And the last part was asking me what race they are, and I said, "Oh, I don't do that." And she was like, "You have to. It's a federal mandate." And I was like, "What are they going to do? Arrest me if I don't?" So I never filled it out. My kids, what I would do, the way I would raise them, is I would teach them. I wouldn't teach them that they're black and their race and all that type of stuff. But all the books that they had in their bedrooms would be people of color, black people in their books. So they get the imagery of who they are and can see themselves as heroes in stories and things like that. But they never really knew of themselves as being black. When they were in third grade and fourth grade, they had to take the state test. And then both my kids came home and they told me that, I think it was like maybe it was after third or fourth grade. Anyways, they came and they told me that their state test had their race on it. My son was listed as white and my daughter was listed as black. My son does very well on state tests. My daughter does not. They automatically made my son white and they made my daughter black. So
and your children, I've seen them, they're the same color.
Yeah. So the thing is, sometimes we got to ask ourselves, is race a circular form of reasoning? Is what is black inherently supposed to be what's negative, what's wrong, what's bad, and what's
Yeah.
white inherently supposed to be what's good and what's proper and what's official.
Right.
So when you view the narrative in such a way, you realize that it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, if I'm a PhD and I put that I make this amount of money in that, and I got these good grades, and I'll put myself as black to represent the cause of the race. Statistics always seem to be manipulated to make black bad and white good.
I'm not going to push back on that. I understand. You got to watch the numbers. You got to see how people are using the numbers. You got to see how people are using data.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, Neil, take France. From what I understand, in France, there's no indication of racial categories on their forms. But you still got a disparity between, your darker French people, whether they are Arab or whether they come from Haiti or whatever. You got a disparity there between them and your lighter French people, right? And so they don't count that. They don't have that on their documents.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you do have, different ways of treating people who are darker, right?
What's the disparity, and who's the arbiter of the treatment?
The lighter skinned French people, just like the lighter skinned everywhere in the world.
So, as black people, should we care how lighter skinned people or white people treat us? Why are they the arbiters? Why do we see them as the judge? Why do we see them as the judge, jury, and executioner? Like, why can't we be that?
Because they are the judge, jury, and executioner.
But maybe
That's the reality of it.
that's the reality, but maybe we need to stop perceiving.
All right, so now you're talking about the psychology of people.
Psychology, yeah.
Okay, that's a whole different scenario.
I think race is very much so intertwined into psychology.
I do agree.
Yeah.
I do agree. Well, we're going to talk about psychology when it comes to some of the art that I'm going to introduce, especially when we get to the art of the Harlem Renaissance, because that when we talk about Aaron Douglas's work, that's going to or Zora Neale Hurston's writings, that's going to take care of a lot of that psychological idea of what we think of ourselves as a race and black. But to establish the idea that this is something that we're going to study, that is in depth in so many complex ways, that there's no way you can exhaust all of the possibilities of this kind of idea. That's the stuff that's feeding us in this podcast.
Yeah.
That's established. That's established. I think what we're going to be getting into more as we progress is all of the different psychological complexities that come with this identity that we call now African American or black. Is that safe to say?
100%.
All right.
Yep.
I think we should end this at this point,
All right.
and let's see what we got for the next.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.
Peace out.
What is